Hello, I'm Chris, the Tabletop Fox, and welcome to my video on Halo Flashpoint, particularly the UNSC faction and reviewing their units and how they are in Season 1. In this video I'm going to be looking at the Deadeye and both his base weapon loadouts. So the Deadeye is one of my favourite units in the game, mainly on an appearance basis, but there's a lot to love about the model itself in regards to how good at shooting it is. So the Deadeye is a specialised unit, so we touched on the Mark 7 being a bit of a jack of all trades mixture there. The Deadeye is the one where he goes, I don't want to fight, I just want to shoot, and he has a 3-up shoot and a 5-up fight. So good at one, well, very good at one, and not very good at the other. Alongside that 3-up shoot ability, he has a keyword called fast transition, which is one of the strongest keywords in the game for shooting. I believe only Stable really comes close to it with the allowance of shooting long weapons after moving. However, what fast transition does is, as long as you're using short action shoots with both weapons, you can fire 2 ranged weapons that you have. Now this can be your base weapon on the card, this can be a pickup weapon, or this can be a grenade. And if you have 2 grenades equipped, you could throw both grenades if you'd like. There's a little fun bit there later when we get to Buck. However, this does mean that you cannot use it with long weapons such as Spartan laser, or sniper scope weapons such as the S7 sniper. In regards to the sniper scope, you can use it with those weapons, but you cannot use the sniper scope bonus, which makes those weapons a lot worse for what they're pointed for. So with that, the Deadeye is incredibly good at killing. Not a huge deal more, you can add other weapons to get utility into him, but his main role here is to kill things from range and to always be able to shoot things. And with that, in Season 0, he had very limited viability because killing was actually not that great. However, in Season 1, we've got Husky now as the op kit. And what that means is, in most game modes, you gain points for killing. The only ones that this doesn't help the Deadeye in is Oddball, because Oddball requires melee kills and holding the Oddball, and the Deadeye isn't particularly special in the way of survivability. He's just a base Spartan in that regard, and you don't really want to be using him as your melee option of choice in that mode. So if you're playing a tournament with Oddball in it, I would very much consider not running a Deadeye unless he is going to be incredibly good for however other many rounds there are in the tournament. So alongside that, how is he in Season 1? He's not been seen that great deal of time, and there are reasons for that. He doesn't have in the great amount of utility side. So in comparison to things like Gunganiers, who are another mainly shooting unit, he doesn't have that ability to be pinning up units. He's purely there for killing. And unlike things like the Mark 7, he doesn't have that flexibility for going for objectives. It doesn't mean he's not a playable unit, and he very much is. But he is getting held back by his cost. He is the most expensive UNSC model that isn't a Legends model. And that is 48 points with the DMR version. The add-on to that is you really need to put a second gun on him. You cannot run him without a second gun, because relying on a pickup on the battlefield just will waste your point investment in a Deadeye. Because 1, you have to get it, 2, you have to hope it's actually decent, and 3, you have to then not get melee killed by the opponent so they can't steal it off you. So, with that in mind, you will be buying another weapon, which means he is going to be 58 points plus, because the weapons you're going to buy for a Deadeye is a BR-75 or Covenant carbine most of the time. Just because, as I mentioned before, the point with a Deadeye is he is shooting both guns every round. The only time the second gun isn't shooting is if the first gun killed the same target you target both into because you wanted to make sure it was dead, say Chief, for example. If there's ODSTs on the board, they won't be for long. And this is the fun one, is if we ever get ODST 5-man or big teams becoming common, a Deadeye is going to be a menace because he could most likely kill 3 per round if you ever shoot die. And that will be pretty strong in any objective mode where you'll get a point per kill, because most of the time you get 4 points for the objective per round, and that will then make a insane output. However, he does struggle a bit when it comes to objective modes, as you are then relying on him making up with kills, and you're likely not going to have a very overall strong team towards objectives if you bring in a Deadeye, because how many points he's taken, and he's not himself a good one at taking objectives. He's not got that Mark 7 ability of being able to shoot but also being able to go in and clear an objective. He can do it with shooting, but again, if you need to get someone off the objective and you can't shoot them, or shooting them would be a difficulty, then it becomes a bit of a problem. So, for example, a stronghold mode, if they were sitting, for example, in the 3VP zone in the corner, and you can't get a line of sight to them, then he's in trouble, because he can't run in and knock them off. He can run in and stop them scoring possibly, but he can't run in and just melee them to death unless you get incredibly lucky. Another example will be extraction, where you need a short action still to be able to disarm or plant the extraction point. And if he has to shoot and move in, then he's not going to have that short action left. So, especially if he's coming off a respawn, which a lot of time, if you're getting to an extraction point, you'll move in off the respawn, and then if you haven't got a move die, he's in trouble because you're unlikely to put a grapple on him. In regards to items you're probably going to put on him, though, you're probably putting on explosive ammo and a threat sensor, because again, we're doubling down on what the Deadeye is good at, and that is making sure he shoots things with those 2 guns and does as much damage as possible. Explosive ammo, simple one, adds 1 dice and lethal to the gun, and if it's already got lethal, it adds an extra lethal on top of it. So Covenant carbine or the DMR will go up to lethal 2. And the threat sensor, it's not so much to do with camoed units, because camoed units will still get a -2 dice mod, and that can make any gun the Deadeye shooting quite ineffective, especially if they put it on something like a Gungnir or a Chosen Warrior with guarded. However, what we would use the threat sensor for more likely is to make sure we can shoot something. So if they're all hidden, or if you've been knocked behind a wall and pinned from a frag, let's say, and you can't both move and then fast transition, or you don't have a move dice, or you've got a shoot dice, so you want to do that 3 shots from your gun, just throw the threat sensor down and shoot him through a wall. Brilliant. Don't have to worry about it. And that is why I put both of those on a Deadeye, because again, he's an expensive unit. You're kitting him with what he needs to do his job, because if you're bringing him and he's not doing his job, then it's a massive tax on your team. Touching on the actual weapons that they come with as base, there is one clear choice you're going to take, and that is the DMR version. He has optics on that gun, which is brilliant. It works perfectly with fast transition, especially when you combine it with BR-75 or Covenant carbine as your other weapon. You'll find both off. They're both long range 6 on the DMR, range 5 on the BR-75, or range 6 on the Covenant carbine. It doesn't have any utility, the DMR, outside of killing, which at least the Covenant carbine or BR-75 can make up for. It would have been nice, but it would have been possibly a bit insane for the Deadeye to have that. The DMR itself is a decent gun. Alongside the optics, it has lethal 1. The only shortcoming I feel with it is the fact it's AP0. And the reason for that is lethal is great if you're wounding the opponent. The Covenant Carbine does it well because it has AP1, so the chance of it wounding is high. However, the DMR with 0 AP, especially going into something like Elite with lots of shields, Chief with shields and armor, or something like a JFO, CQB with high armor, it's going to have some issues. And add into that a Gungnir where they have guarded and it's not getting its crits, and it's still got that 2 shields, 2 armor. It's going to have issues getting through the armor at times, and that means that lethal is pointless. So a lot of the time in those situations, I'd put the DMR as a shield stripper. Say if I was going into Chief, I would fire the DMR first to strip the shields and then follow up with the BR, the Covenant Carbine, whichever one I've taken, because they've got that AP to get through and then they can do the real damage, especially throwing the explosive rounds on those. Into Elites, I'd probably either pin with the BR-75 first and then follow up the DMR, or I'd send the Covenant Carbine first, then follow up the DMR so that they don't get their free evade. Other one there is you can have the threat sensor on their position, so no matter where they evade, you'll still be able to shoot them with a second gun because they can't break line of sight because of that threat sensor. But overall, the DMR is a very solid secondary gun for him. It's going to do some work. As I said, if there's ODSTs, it's going to kill one unless you get very unlucky alongside the other gun shooting something else, or it's very good as a shield stripper with a good chance of doing some damage. The Stalker Rifle, on the other hand, as we mentioned, what does the fast transition not like? Things that need long actions, and that is a sniper scope, which the Stalker Rifle has. It does have AP1, which is great, as mentioned, instead of lethal, so it does have that over the DMR, and it's 2 points cheaper, but it doesn't work with fast transition properly. You're going to have no crit 7s, and you're going to have only your base dice, as if you're shooting a gun without optics, and that's just not great. Because also when you're doing a shoot dice, yeah, you might shoot it over a BR-75 just because it's got 1 extra dice over weight of fire 1. So it's slightly better there. But against Covenant Carbine, you're not going to shoot it over that. It's got lethal 1 and AP1. It gets 1 less dice, but it has some possible plays, but I haven't really found them yet, and for me it just doesn't work. I'd be very surprised if you see one of these being played ever, unless they're running 3+ Deadeyes, which would be quite a hilarious list. I'd be interested to see the oops all Deadeyes, but I don't really see the Stalker Rifle being played in anything else other than that craziness. But the Deadeye, as I said, is a generally good unit. We don't see it a lot at the moment in the competitive just because there are units that just outdo it with doing objectives. But if we see a mode where it's very kill heavy, so I know Husky already is kill heavy, but with less objectives and more focus on just the kills, so stuff like VIP, if someone randomly brings Slayer back in, that I think one tournament coming up is doing, Headhunter maybe as well, because yes, you don't directly get points for killing, but his ability just to pop a load of skulls so you can have someone, one of your melee units or an ODST, go and sweep them up is really useful for that. Stuff like Illusion or Siege, I can also see him because you don't need everyone focusing on running the objective. But I think stuff like King of the Hill, Extraction, he's a bit more of a struggle with, because also killing units in those modes can give them a big bonus for getting the objective, so you really have to be killing a lot of units to outdo the points that you're losing out on. But yeah, Deadeye, great general unit. The DMR one is really solid. If you want something fun to run, then Deadeyes are incredibly fun. I just don't think they're quite the top tier competitive, and with the competition they have out there, they're going to be seen not as commonly, mainly as well because of how expensive they are. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if there's anything you disagree with in my thoughts about the unit, or anything you think I missed, please feel free to let me know in the comments. But with that, I've been the Tabletop Fox. I hope you have a lovely day, and ta-ra!